Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about stress, and not only stress, but how stress is impacting your body in the form of inflammation. Today, I have brought Stephanie Pazniokas, and we're going to be talking about all of these things that we know are going on in our body, and we feel it, we see it, but we're not talking about it in the detail that we need to, and how we can start making changes in our lives. Welcome to the Balance Code Podcast, a place for high achievers to step outside the hamster wheel of day-to-day life and start learning tools for more balance. I'm your host, Katie Russler, and I will be guiding you on this journey of discovering your balance code. Stephanie, thank you for being here. I am excited to hear what you have to teach us about this topic that we kind of know is there, but we don't want to address it because it means we have to look at the food we're eating and how we're treating our bodies and the stress we're putting ourselves under. But it's time, right? We're hitting burnout at high rates. It's time to have these discussions. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm actually super happy to be here. I could talk about this for a week straight. So
Perfect. You're at the right place then. I like to ask good questions that get us going, like chewing on these things to learn it. So share with us a little bit more about yourself, where you are, who you serve, and what you do.
yeah. So my name is Stephanie Pazniokas. I'm trained up in psychobiology and biochemistry. An undergraduate, did some graduate work, my master's in neuroscience, and I came to this place through a very stressful and disease-ridden period of my life where everything seemed to fall apart. Disease was creeping in, weight was creeping up, stress was sky high, my sleep was horrible. I was traveling all the time for work. So basically just going through all of that and a number of things happening in my life, I ended up here in the health coaching world because it took a lot of work and application of my knowledge in a new way, not the conventional wisdom way, to realize what was really going on and to connect everything that I knew about my body with what I was doing in real life. And a lot of times we do that. We have this knowledge, but yet there are things that we think about health from our childhood that we don't really realize are completely impacting the decisions we make. And so now I'm really interested in working with people who are interested in understanding why things, why do these people online tell me do this, 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 and this? They're just like, oh, do all these things and you'll be fine. You don't understand why. It doesn't really have any weight in your brain. It's just difficult to make the big changes when the thing you really want is right in front of your face. You don't understand why you're doing it. The other aspect of it is really neuroscience, how to create change in your life that is lasting, real transformation, sustainable lifestyle changes that support your long-term health, right? And that is, I absolutely love doing, not just educating people, but actually helping them make the kinds of changes in their way their brain and body can adapt so that it isn't just a yo-yo, crazy, up and down, in and out, no diet lifestyle. We're really just all about creating your healthy lifestyle. It's very personalized, very based on where you are. So I really help people become the boss of their health. And I always use the analogy. We are the CEO of our bodies. We have an executive center in our brain, and we get we are accountable for all of our decisions. Nobody else is. Ultimately, we are making these decisions, and I really want to empower people in the best way possible to do the best things they can for themselves.
I love that you pointed out you really personalize, the work you do with each client. One of my biggest pet peeves is that people get into this works for everyone. This is what it is, and when it comes to inflammation in the body, if we're not looking at the individual, then we're missing the whole point. We are looking at, if we go, here's the generic, this works for everyone, eat this, do this, I think we're missing a lot. And unfortunately, most of us are in times in our lives where we're exhausted. We don't want to research more. So when they tell us that's what we're supposed to do, we give up that food, we drink more of that, we take that supplement instead of really learning what our body needs. Let's dive into how do we start to better understand inflammation, what message it's sending us, and how we can start to personalize our own experience of gaining that information, right? Because it's very easy to just look at inflammation broadly. But when it comes to each of us, what are the things we need to be thinking about?
Okay, yeah. So, ultimately today we're going to be really diving in and focusing on stress, but lots of things can cause inflammation in our body because you have to understand inflammation is our body's response to a threat or, any kind of lack of homeostasis in our body. Homeostasis is balance. Everything in our body is designed to be in a particular balance. We are absolutely perfectly capable of being fully healthy. And when there are external or even from our internal, as we're going to talk about, things that disrupt that homeostasis, our body is going to respond with stress because it is a survival mechanism, right? That is how we've survived for thousands of years, is being able to respond and adapt to our environment. What happens is when that gets so fully out of balance that we're in a state of chronic inflammation. And that is actually what is underlying most of the major diseases today. They're not communicable diseases. They're not diseases you catch from someone. They're diseases of chronic inflammation and of metabolic imbalance and various things that are causing our body not to be in balance. And lots of things can impact that, right? Stress is just one of them. There are the types of foods we're eating and the kinds of ingredients in them that our bodies have never seen. 1,000 years ago, those didn't exist. So we don't have the capability for actually dealing with them. So they are seen as a threat where our body tries to figure out what to do with them. Can the liver break them down and get rid of them? No. Where am I going to put this? I'm going to shove it over here in this fat cell, but it's going to actually disrupt the ability of that fat cell to work appropriately. I'm going to increase, the cytokines and inflammation and all of those types of things that are going to help my body, release macrophages to eat up that cell or to eat up that thing and try to get rid of it. It's just doing its best to keep us healthy. But when we have things coming in all over the place, all of the time, we're really keeping our body in a place where it's just out of balance. And one of those things is stress. And the way I want to talk about stress today really is broad because it does cover all of those things, because there are many causes of stress. Stress in our body is just a matter of how far out of balance we are. And it can be our temperature. It can be, or it can be our environment. Are we in a threatening, unsafe environment? Are we in a very stressful work situation? There's a lot behind it. You could probably think about it. Bacterial infections are a type of stress. A viral infection is a type of stress. Air pollution is a type of stress. Being exposed to pesticides and insecticides and flame retardants and aldehydes and things that they're putting in our clothes. I mean, there's so many different places. You could easily get overwhelmed going, oh my gosh, I can't live in a bubble. And you can't, right? So the point is to really get our body where it is being supported enough that it can handle what is coming at it. We just have to balance that out a little bit so what's coming in isn't more than what we can handle, right?
Well, and I love what you're sharing is that, okay, let's look at the external stressors. Let's look at the stuff we're putting in our body. But even the emotional, mental, right? Confrontation with someone is almost to the equal of, hey, I ate something my body doesn't like. Like, it is all stress and it is all creating inflammation in the body. So
it is.
Dive in deeper, because I feel like I love that you're bringing the science into it. Help us better understand, why does even the mental and emotional stress in our environment causing physical inflammation?
This is my favorite thing. And because all of it ultimately does. So the definition of stress is literally being out of balance, being out of homeostasis, right? Even at a cellular level. And what happens when stress is present? What happens? So think about our psychosocial stress or any kind of, stress in the environment. Once upon a time, we had to run from lions and tigers and bears, right? We've all heard this analogy. You run from a bear, your body has to now put out cortisol. And this is natural. We always think of cortisol as being enemy, but it is absolutely critical to our survival, because if we get low blood sugar, that's lack of homeostasis, right? Cortisol has to activate to allow our bodies and our liver and our muscles to release sugar into the blood to bring it back up, right? So that's normal and it's important. When we wake up in the morning, we release cortisol to help us get going in the day, right? That is natural. That is the dawn phenomenon. That's why our blood sugars go up a little bit higher in the morning. It's triggered by cortisol. Now, what ends up happening though, when we are feeling threatened, when we get into that sympathetic fight or flight mode, our, our adrenals, we release the cortisol, our brain says, oh, we've got to do all these things. So your brain, your hypothalamus ends up doing lots of things after that. And one of the things that it does is it starts raising insulin to deal with the glucose that is about to get flooded into your body. The glycogen, which is a glucose storage molecule, so we can have that emergency, quick acting energy on call, gets released into our muscles so that we can run, right? And then cortisol is also causing our liver to take our protein and create sugar out of it instead of using it for making enzymes and building blocks for our body and, neurotransmitter, like whatever it is that we need that protein for, muscle building. It's going to, and if we don't have enough in our food, it's going to take it from our muscles. It's going to take it from our bones, right? And so it's because it's going to replenish the glycogen in the liver. And it's going to make sure that we have enough glucose going into those cells to keep us running and to keep us going. And then, so this is that cortisol. But what happens is that that cortisol also causes an increase in called free radicals. That's reactive oxygen species in our mitochondria, right? So it isn't, there's this glucose, there's all this stuff that's happening, but we're actually getting increased oxidative stress inside of our mitochondria. And if we can't balance that, then it causes a number of other things to happen, right? So this then triggers activation of pro-inflammatory genes to increase cytokines. Those are, and that's part of our immune response, inflammation response, and other inflammatory factors as well. And additionally, we end up getting DNA damage. We get protein damage. We get lipid damage. So things get oxidized, right? There's actually ample evidence that shows that people who experience chronic stress show signs of accelerating aging, systemic inflammation, and shorter telomere length. That's at the ends of our DNA. That's associated with aging, right? So you hear people say, "Oh, they look like they were aging before our eyes." They were, right? They really were. So the damage is done. This is not just in the brain, but throughout the body. So in the end, we can summarize that, say, like the chronic activation of that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That's that stress cycle. Everything involved in our stress response. Keeping cortisol levels high results in oxidative stress inside of our cells, resulting in that cellular imbalance where we don't have enough antioxidants to clean it up. So think of it like a police or a constable force, right? We have a certain amount, and we have too many people looting in the city, doing damage, setting fires, inflammation, right? Throwing rocks through the windows, like damage to the nearby molecules like DNA and protein and lipids. This triggers an inflammatory cascade because our body is now going to have to protect against all of this damage, and it's going to try to keep it cleaned up. And basically, we're just trying to get back into balance. But when it's chronic, we really can't, especially if we're not supporting our body. We're not giving our body time to be outside of that state. We have a parasympathetic nervous system. We have an ability, a time where we heal. But if we're always in this chronic stress state, right, we're never giving our body a chance to get out of it, right? So there's actually a great paper in the Journal of Psychoneuroendocrinology. That's one of my favorite topics, right? Because everything is related, right? It's not just in your mind, the psycho. It's your nervous system, it's your endocrine system. They're all working together. That's what we're talking about. So in 2013, Christina Aschbacher and others wrote this great paper, and they have a fantastic summary of this whole mechanism. And they reference many other papers, and what they say is, psychological stress and distress have been associated with higher levels of oxidative damage. That's that free radicals, Then stress management should be a core component of preventive interventions designed to improve healthy aging and everything else, right? Because it's a core about many diseases.
There's two things that I want to draw light to that you pointed out as important. One, you didn't say it, but liver health, because it's filtering, it's detoxing, it's helping with this thing. And second, how crucial it is that we learn how to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. Like those two things are like, out of all, you had some amazing pieces to it, but I'm like, hey, listener, those two things, we got healthy liver, like working on that for the physical, along with how do we activate in our brains, I am safe, I am okay, everything's okay. And I like to always throw in with my clients, because they think, oh, that's just deep breathing and, meditation or journaling. I'm like, you might need to go for a run. You might need to go run from that bear, even though it wasn't a bear and it was just your mother-in-law, whatever it might be, right? Like sometimes you actually need to physically get out to process those chemicals through your body. So as you talk about this how it's activating this inflammation in us, can we get a little into what does it look like to start to shift this so that we're not in this chronic stress phase so often, and really starting to allow our bodies to do the bounce back it used to be able to do before we started putting in all the other stuff that was making it worse?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of answer the first part first, just address the liver health a little bit, and sort of like coming at a little bit from sideways, because our bodies are going to be trying to set things back to baseline after the release of cortisol. Okay, as I said, it causes liver and muscle to make glucose, immediately available, right? So, right now we're getting this danger response to run, and we're not running, we're sitting, we're whatever. So what has to happen, right? So one thing our brain does to bring everything back down is trigger the desire to eat comfort food.
Yep.
And there's two reasons for this. One is to reduce cortisol by stimulating serotonin production, but the other is to replenish glucose stores for the next emergency. So nowadays, that comfort food is usually in the form of some processed or junk food, cake, cookies, ice cream, pizza, pasta, hot bread, whatever, what you name it, right? It's that thing that you go to. And, we think it's willpower that we do that. It's really, our brain is trying to get back into balance. But if you're aware of that, you can actually decide to do different things and to have healthier things and to have things that are going to actually support you better, because those things tend to have a lot of toxins in them that are actually going to just exacerbate the problem. And it's not just our liver. Our gut is involved too, but we just don't have time to go into all of that. But many of the ingredients in those foods are inflammatory. The sugar increases inflammation. We know this just from what happens in type 2 diabetes when sugar is chronically high in the blood. I mean, there's a lot of damage throughout the body just from that. And there's a whole mechanism involved. But then their oils and fat seeds in these fake foods are high in linoleic acid. That's the omega-6. And that has to be in balance in our bodies. Our bodies are looking for a balance there too with omega-3 and omega-6. And when that gets out of balance, we're out of homeostasis. So those actually break down into a very, very toxic free radical in our body called 4-HNE. And that is very difficult for our body to clear, even with antioxidants. So we really have to be careful about what we're going to try to get ourselves out of stress. So how do we get out of stress? You can't just, eat all those things. So stress, by driving us to have food that will provide glucose to bring down our cortisol and increase our serotonin, can also cause indirect inflammation in that way, making it worse simply because we often choose to eat, and that situation isn't the best choice. So because then we're putting more on our liver at that point when we're bringing in all of that stuff, because a lot of the sugar in those has to get processed through our liver. Fructose can't get processed anywhere. It has to go straight to our liver. Right. So we're just taxing our liver with all of this stuff. So liver health is important. But let's kind of think about, how do we get out of this? How do we get into that serotonin and that or the parasympathetic response, that rest and digest, that heal and healthful place where we can recover, our bodies can recover and get restored. So one thing is to understand that the hormone oxytocin is sort of at the top of the hierarchy, right? And that is our bonding hormone, right? That is the hormone that a mom and baby share. Dogs have it. Domesticated dogs have oxytocin. That sets them apart from wolves that don't. You look in your dog's eyes, they're bonding with you. You're bonding with them, right? cuddling your babies, cuddling your loved ones, holding hands with someone, looking at someone in the eyes and having a meaningful conversation with them, volunteering, being in gratitude, thinking about what love, thinking on good things, um, you know, all of that stuff enhances our oxytocin, relationships, singing with other people in karaoke, like you can name it, board game night, going for a hike, right? All of that stuff increases oxytocin. And what's important about that is oxytocin actually shuts down the production of cortisol.
Mm.
So when you can get into a place where you're stimulating oxytocin, the cortisol production line, the head honcho on the manufacturing floor in your brain, your hypothalamus goes up, shut that down. There's no more orders for cortisol. We're good. Oxytocin, we're safe. We're loved. We're not running from a bear. Okay, so that's really, really important. That is one aspect of all of this, right? So yeah, you can meditate, you can do all those other things. You can go for a run. Why? Because that is going to, whether it's running or hiking or, anything, it doesn't have to be hugely strenuous exercise either. You could do calf raises, just to get your calf muscles to start using and soaking up that glucose in your blood, right? You just want to use it because otherwise you're just going to store it, right? That insulin's going to be high. You're going to be storing. And that's why stress is so related to weight gain. There's a lot of things there. I mean, and so especially as women get older and insulin suppresses estrogen and testosterone, right? So it's worse when you get older and your hormone levels are naturally going down and then you have stress on top of it. Cortisol blocks progesterone. Again, think about what you're not going to do if you're in a dangerous situation. Having sex and procreating is probably not something your body is, so those are lower on that hierarchy. So you got oxytocin, you've got cortisol, and then you've got your sex hormones. So again, our bodies want to be in balance and they want to feel safe in order to have good hormonal balance. So, hopefully I answered, your question, but sometimes we're in stress situations like, our hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our base things are not getting met. And so we don't feel safe. We don't have food security. We don't have shelter security. We might not have physical security. And this is when it's really important to get help, right? We really need to get help sometimes. And it may be that you find somebody who can help with tapping or EFT or EMDR or cognitive behavioral therapy or something to help you get your mind thinking differently so that you can say, this thing that's causing me stress, is it real? Is it real? Because there might have been a door slamming and my glucose just spiked, and it happens. You can see that on continuous glucose monitors. Weird things that happen. So are you super reactive and are you a hyper stress responder? You're easily triggered. You're going to have to start working on not allowing that to happen. And we don't really think about it because we always thought it was just a feeling, that it's just in our head. But once you start understanding that all of these things are having a physiological impact on you down into your mitochondria, where you're supposed to be creating energy, but you're not when you're in stress, you're in it's in a cell protection mode. It's throwing out more reactive oxygen species to stimulate the immune system to deal with a threat. I mean, this is going down right all the way into the tiniest parts of our body. So really learning how to deal with your stress can have a huge impact on your overall health. And it's really important. So what is in my control? What's in my sphere of control? Am I worried and stressed about something that I can do nothing about because it isn't even possible? It just might have a 40% chance of happening. Okay. Can I make that 30% chance? Is that the best I can do? Okay. Letting it know, not going to deal with it till it gets here because it's not going to help. It's only going to hurt me.
I love how you kept bringing back our body is just finding its balance. Our body is just finding its balance. And here on the balance code, we're just trying to find our balance and the different facets of it, which is, again, subjective and unique to us. But how cool that our body is constantly trying to discover its balance code and get it, hold on, let's shift this. And in a way, by trying to protect us and help find balance, sometimes the consequence can be negative if our body's not able, like you said, to function correctly, to filter correctly, or we're not releasing these things. So I love that you said, even calf raises, like doing something to get the glucose out. Sometimes it's small. right? It's simple things, but the education around it, understanding like this is impacting your DNA. We're all talking about how can we live longer and do this and that, but we're not talking about like, yes, we know stress is this killer. Well, let's talk about then start to shift that, right? Not just talk about it, but start to do the things. So it was great you gave some practical advice of like, hey, recognize these things are happening and here's some ways to get that oxytocin going, right? And go like, okay, I'm safe now, cortisol, turn off, you're good, and being aware. And I know you have a wealth of resources that these listeners can come to. Where can they connect with you to start to learn more? Because you are just the scientist mind that is so fascinating, the stuff you spit out. Like, I want to know, where can people get more information from you?
Absolutely. I mean, the best place really is in my Facebook group. It's called Be the Boss, Be Well, right? So it's very easy to find Be the Boss, Be Well. And that is my Facebook group. And in there, I have many, many trainings. So I have a video guide. All my videos are on there. I have so many posts, educational posts and guides. You can go into the group. You can search for almost anything, and you'll probably find something about it. I'm also a culinary nutrition expert, so I actually do help people connect food with health. And I do a lot of education around that, and I'll throw out recipes. I create recipes, and that is sort of like a thing that I do because I had to do it for myself. It's, so I have all of that as well. And it's sort of a bit of a hobby. I have almost 2,000 recipes in my phone that and my husband, every time he has a new one, I really like this one. He goes, it's going to be 3 years before we have it again, but but you don't have to be a master chef. A lot of things are very easy because I have, 3 kids. I have a grandchild that lives in that. There's a lot going on. And so I don't have time to spend hours in the kitchen either. So I don't expect you to. But there's a lot of things in that Facebook group. And I also offer quarterly master classes that really go into some fun things and help give you some really practical ways of shifting your health. So I do that on a regular basis, of course. So, and you'll always, if you're in the Facebook group, you're going to know when it's happening, so you won't miss it.
Yes. So the link to that Facebook group will be in the show notes, but go join it. Do the search function. Often we forget, like in these Facebook groups, when we join it, we're like, cool, I'm in it. Go immediately start searching. Search for the topics you're interested in. Stephanie's going to have a ton of resources on different things. So you can be putting in stress, you can be putting in liver, you can be putting in recipe or whatever, and you're going to find all sorts of things. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for giving us more education around the topic of how our stress, mental, emotional, and physical is creating the inflammation in our body, which is just creating a cycle of more stress, but giving us the tools of what we can start to do to be the boss again of that. And I do hope that those who are listening will go and join your group so that they're in the know when your next masterclass is, when your resources are coming out, because it sounds like we're going to have a lot of tools to help us in creating more balance in our lives. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. This is really wonderful.
And dear listener, here's to finding our balance code. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Take a moment to leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. That helps other listeners just like you to find this podcast too. Want to connect and learn how we can work together? Check out the links in the show notes below. Discovering your balance code doesn't have to be a one-person journey. You can have a team, and I'd love to support you. So here's to finding our balance code.